Good morning, everyone, on this. Well, for me, it is a miserable day. Hopefully, when you're watching this, it is a good day. That's basically just the weather. So recently, I did completed the fifth puzzle in the series of puzzles I've been doing, where I've been exploring the diagonal constraint. Um, Happily for me, the third puzzle in that series was recently featured on Cracking the Cryptic, and that was an awesome moment for me. Mark solved the puzzle very differently to the way I did. The puzzle was treasure map. You can see the intended solve path in my treasure map video, also on this channel. And then you can see how Mark solves it very differently. It's always fun to see how different people solve puzzles. I find that always fascinating. Um, so I've been creating these puzzles to explore because I like the diagonal constraint, and I wanted to see how different things could how different other constraints would interact with it. A Walk in the Black Forest, which is the German Whispers one, I think was probably my favorite in the series, but I also quite like this one. So this is Go. Someone had asked me how I come up with the names of my puzzles. I generally complete a puzzle and then I look at the grid, and I then basically treat it a bit like a Rorschach test. Where whatever I look at and I say, oh, it looks a bit like, that's what the name of the puzzle comes up as. I don't put too much thought into it, or at least most of the time I don't. Um, so this is Go because I felt it looked a bit like a Go board. I've played some Go in my life. I'm not very good at it. And This, as I said, it's the fifth in my series of puzzles exploring the diagonal constraint. Before I go into the rules, once again, I've had people who have YouTube channels tell me that I should ask people if they like the video to like it, and they should ask them to subscribe. I'm not really wanting to push this channel too much, but sure, if people want to do that, they can. If they don't like the video, feel free to say that as well. I really don't mind. So anyway, to this puzzle. Go is using the rules. Normal Sudoku rules. In a box, a column, or a row, the digits 1 to 9 must appear without repetition. Because this is a diagonal, the same appears on these blue diagonal lines. Each of these blue diagonal lines must contain the numbers 1 to 9 without repetition. Now, this is a Kropki, but what I've done is I've made a minor change to it. So normally with Kropki, where you will have diagonals of cells, and a black dot will indicate that the cells must have a 1 to 2 ratio, and a white dot must have a must be consecutive. What I've done, however, is I've stated, if you look at the rules, that between cells in rows, columns, or along the indicated diagonals, then the dots will apply. What that means is if I look at this dot, these two cells must have a 1 to 2 ratio, but these two cells don't have to have a 1 to 2 ratio because these two cells are not along the indicated diagonal, but these two cells are. So what I wanted to do was add the Kropki constraint to the indicated diagonals to allow me to use the indicated diagonals to explore the Kropki constraint. So hopefully you will find this interesting. And now let's try and solve the puzzle. So I do know the solve path for this one fairly well, having said it recently, though not perfectly. So I may get a little bit stuck partway along. But what I do know is these sections of 3 dots. These are the primary way of breaking into the puzzle. So the way it works is if you look at these, because of the way the diagonal constraint works, this turns out to be effectively a run of digits because they all see each other. The same applies here. But these turn out to be a run of digits. And normally when you have a run of digits with black dots between them that can all see each other, because the only possibilities on Kropki dots, if we treat these cells as if they have dots between them, then you can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. and I should have been using center marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. You can't use 5, 7, or 9 because they've got to have a ratio of 1 to 2. If you use a 5, you'd have to use 2.5 or 10. Doesn't work. To use 7, you have to use 3.5 or 14. Doesn't work. And 9 is 4.5 and 18. But these can have it. But if you notice 3 and 6, 3 can only connect to 6. So if you have a run of 3 dots, you'd have to go 3, 6, 3, which doesn't work, or 6, 3, 6, which doesn't work. So when you have a run of 3 dots, you can take 3 and 6 out. And because if you had 8 in the middle, you'd have to have 4 on both sides, or if you had 1 in the middle, you'd have to have 4 on both sides. You can take 8 and 1 out of the middle, and you end up with a run of 3 that looks like this with 2 and 4 in the middle. And as I said, this is assuming, just for visualization's sake, that you've got the run of 3 dots across here. So what you end up with when you've got a run of 3 dots is 1, 2, 4, 8 at either end and a 2, 4 in the middle. Now, because these are effectively a run of 3 because of the diagonal, it means you can put 2, 4 in the middle, and you can put 1, 2, 4, 8 at either end. And you can do the same here. You can put 2, 4 in the middle, and you can put 1, 2, 4, 8 at either end. So this is the one end. This is the other end, whichever way you go. So either there to there to there, or there to there to there. And again, this is because these cells all see each other, and you end up with this. But we can now look at this indicated diagonal and see that there is already a 2 and a 4 on the indicated diagonal. So we can take 2, 4 off of there. Once you take 2, 4 off of there, these each become constrained. Because if you go 1, 2, you must go to 4. And if you go 8, 4, you must go to 2. So you can't have 1 or 8 in either of those cells. And the same applies down here. Excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that. So what you end up with is this nice little pressure on these caused by those black dots, including the diagonals. Now we can look at this run of white dots in the center box. Actually, there's 2 places we can look. I'll do this first. So if this is a 1, it must go 2. And because I can't go back to 1, because if I go 1, 2, 1, that'll be a problem, it must go 1, 2, 3. The same with 8. If I go to 8, I can either go to 7 or 9, but if I go to 9, I must go back to 8, and I'll end up with 2 8s. So that doesn't work. I can't have 8. So it has to go 8, 7, and I can't go back up to 8, so it has to go to 6. So I've got 8, 7, 6, or 1, 2, 3. On this diagonal, you'll notice I've already got 1, 2, 4, and 8 on this diagonal, but I've still got a black Kropki dot, which means the only 2 Kropki digits I haven't put on to the line already are 3 and 6, and these 3 cells have to be the 5, 7, and 9. Now I can look at this diagonal, and you will notice that normally you've got the sequence of digits 1, 2, 4, 8, or 3 and 6, but because of this run of white dots, you've ended up with the 3, 6 here. So you can't actually put 3 or 6, and you have to use 1, 2, 4, 8 in those corners. Because if you were to put a 3, 6 here, this cell would have no fill. You could not put anything into this cell. So you end up with this situation. Now you've got these 2 white dots coming into play. Because if you put a 1 into this cell, all of those 3 cells would have to be 2, which is absurdly ludicrous. So you can take a 1 out of there. Before I do that, one thing to note about these is because they're on the same line, I can't use a 2, 4. If I was to put a 2, 4 here, this would be 1, 8, which are not in a 1 to 2 ratio. So one of these has to be 1, 2, and one of these has to be 4, 8. I can't split them up. So I can take 1 out of here. If I put 2 into here, the 2 adjacent cells would be 1 and 3, which means this would have to be 2, 4. And as I've just stated, if you have 2, 4, that would leave 1 and 8 for up here, which are not in a 1 to 2 ratio. So I can't put a 2 in there. So this becomes the 4, 8, and we end up with the 1, 2 up there. So this is the first part of the break-in. It hasn't given us any digits yet, but we have locked down where where the pressure is on this grid. The next place to look is actually those two cells, because those two cells are severely constricted by these two cells and the interaction that this is a chain. Because remember, these three cells see each other. So this is a 1, 2, 4, 8 chain. If I was to put, so we know that the Kropki digits in here, you'll have 1, 2, 2, 4, 3, 6, or 4, 8. Now, the question is, because these are 1, 2, 4, and 8, can I put 1, 2, 2, 4, or 4, 8 in here? If I was to put 1, 2 in here, then this would become 8 and 4. And if this is 4, this would be 2, that would be 8, and 2 and 8 are not in a 1 to 2 ratio with each other. So 1, 2 is not possible. 2, 4 breaks that cell instantly. There's no fill, so we can't do that. 4, 8 would make this 2 and 1. 1 there would make that 2, and that would have to be 2 as well because we've already used the 4, 8, and that's broken. So all of a sudden, the only options we can put in there are 3 and 6. So what we know is that these have to be filled with 3 and 6, and both of those are the same. Sorry, my nose is running. Okay. The next thing that comes into play is this white dot. Next to a 1, it would have to be a 2, and next to an 8, it would have to be a 7 or a 9. And while we don't need to know this digit, what we need to know is what's not possible. Because now we look at this central box and we can ask ourselves, there's a 3, 6 looking here. These can't be 3 or 6, so we can put a 3, 6 in here. Now we can ask ourselves the first important question. Now we can get ourselves our first digit, because we can ask ourselves, where can 4 go in this box? Because 4 is not possible in any of these cells. We've ruled it out. And 4 is already we've got a 4 in a pair on this diagonal. So 4 must go here. Once we've got a 4 there, all of these collapse. That becomes a 2, that becomes a 4, that becomes a 2, that becomes an 8, that becomes a 1, that becomes a 2. Both of those become 4, that becomes a 2, that becomes a 7, that becomes a 6, that becomes a 3. There is no 7 there, and that is a 5, 9 pair. And all of that collapses because the 3, 6 in here forces this has to be the 4, sees this 2, 4 pair, and the whole thing collapses. And you get to this state, and that's the end of the break-in. So there's a whole heap of little things to notice caused by the pressure of all of these digits. Okay, I hope that explanation was interesting for the break-in, and now we can get on to solving the rest of the puzzle. The break-in was the key element to this puzzle, and now it is just down to solving, which I've only done, I think, twice before, but it's been solved by quite a few people and has had quite a good rating. I do wish, I should have done this at the beginning, I do wish to thank both Sam Keppelman-Lyons and Codec for providing feedback on this puzzle to me. Now, on this diagonal, we have 7 locked into those two cells. So 7 in this box must be in one of those two cells because we've got the 5, 7, 9 pair, and we can't have a 7 in here. The next question is, the next thing to look at is this Kropki dot, consecutive dot. Because if we look at it, we cannot put 1, 2 because that would break that cell. We can't put 2, 3 because we can't use 3 in the row. We can't put 3, 4. We can't use that. There's a 4 in the box and we can't use 3 in the row. 4, 5 we can't use. There is a 4 in the box. Can't use 5, 6. There's a 6 in the row. Can't use 6, 7. There's a 6 in the row. So all that's left is 7, 8 and 9. And whichever of 7, 8 or 8, 9 we use, we must use an 8. So we've been able to narrow this down to 7, 8 and 9. Now I've got to remember what's next. It's been a while. Well, a couple of days. So once we narrow this down to 7, 8, and 9, so a couple of things we can do. We can see that 2's are pointing into this corner. 2's are pointing into this corner. We have 4's pointing into this corner, and we have 4's pointing into this corner. And that's caused by these 2, 4 pairs. This is not that restricted. I mean, I can write the 3, 5, 7, 9 in. This is much, I mean, this can be 2, 5, or 7. Can't be 4 because there's a 4 in the box. Trying to remember what's next. I don't think it's this yet, although this is a bit restricted. And as always, when I'm solving my own puzzles, I don't remember the exact path, and I'm sure that people are seeing things that I'm not, even though I created it. When I create the puzzles, I am normally looking for what the next step will be and what will provide the solver with good information, but I don't remember the exact thing I put in and the order I put it in and what I expected people to find. So I'm kind of having to solve it again from scratch. And there's always the extra pressure of doing it while on camera. Okay, I'm going to look at this cell. It can be 1, it can't be 2, can't be 3, can't be 4, it can be 5, can't be 6, it can be 7, 8, or 9. So 1, 5, 7, 8, 9. So if this is 1, 5, 7, 8, or 9, if this was 1, this would have to be 2, so it can't be 1. If this is 5, this would be 4 or 6, it can be 4. If this was 7, this would have to be 6 or 8, so it can't be 7. If this is 8, this would have to be 7 or 9, it could be 9. If this was 9, this would have to be 8, and it can't be 8, so it can't be 9. So this 5, 8 means that 5 makes this 4 or 6, and it can't be 6, and 8 makes this 7 or 9. So these two are much more restricted than they look. So 5, 8, 4, 9. Can't put a 7 up here. Four is in one of those two. 2 and 2 are looking into this box. That's the critical piece of information. Because this is forced to be 7, 8, 9, I should have noticed this earlier, 2 and 2 are already given here, so you need to put 2 in there. And so 2 must go here, which unravels this 1, 2. That means that 2 can't be here, so this becomes a 2, which means this now must be 3 and 6. That 2 puts a 2 in there, which means that's not a 2. That may be as far as we get with that, I'm not sure. But the important thing we get now is that 1. Because that 1 means, if we look here, we've got 2 1s pinching into box 4, which means 1 must go there now that we've proven that this cell cannot have a 1. So we've now got 1 in those two. Now, yes, now is the harder to spot deduction that I use, which is, if we look here, we've got 4, 3, and 6 in that column, and we've got 4, 3, and 6 in that column. So that means we need to put 4, 3, and 6 into the bottom in the middle here. This one can't be 6, this one can't be 3, this one can't be 4. But we have actually locked out those 3 cells because of those triples. That means 1 must go into one of those 2 cells. So 1 is locked out of those, 1 is locked out of those because of the pinching triples, 1 is in there. This one, which we just got, means that 1 can't go in that cell, so it must go in one of those 2 cells, those 3 cells. Now we can ask ourselves, where can 1 go in row 7? Can't go there because of that one, can't go there because of that one, can't go there because there's already a 1 on the diagonal, and we get a 1 at the end of row 7. That pinches 1 into one of those 2 spots. Now, of course, this diagonal, if we look at it, it has 1, 2, it can take a 3, 4, 5, 6, can take a 7, 8, and 9. So this can only be 3 or 7 in this box and this box. If we look now into box 9, we've got no 6 in this box, which means 6 must go into here, and 6 is now looking into here. This must be a 4, this must be a 3, this must be a 6. This 4 is looking over here, making that an 8 and that a 4. That takes 7 and 9 out of those. That becomes a 3, 5. That becomes a 7. That becomes a 3. And the diagonals are starting to resolve. So this being a 3, 5, which this 3 resolves it. That's a 5, that's a 3. This 3, 5, this is now a 6, 9 pair. And we've got a few triples that we can put in, which I might do. So they're 5, 8, and 9. These are 1, 5, and 7. Can't put a 1 there. I have to remember what the next steps are. We've got 4 2s looking into this box, so I can put a 2 right there. This 4 is looking up, making that a 4 and that not a 4. That 4 is looking across, making that a 4 and that not a 4. That 4 is looking down, making that a 4, which means that is now a 5, and there is no 5 in either of those. That 5 means that there's no 5 there. This is now a 1, 7, and there needs to be a 5 in one of those 2. And while I've gotten here using this path, I am aware that there, after the break-in, which is fairly forced, there are multiple ways of solving after that. You can find these sorts of deductions in different orders and in different ways. So if we look at this column, can't put 5 there, can't put 5 there, can't put 5 there. That becomes the 5. There is no 5 there. So this is a 1, 7. Okay. This was, to be honest, I think this was one of my favorite deductions in the entire grid after the break-in, which is if we look at row 1, we've got 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8 already locked into those cells. So these have to be 1, 5, 7, and 9, and that gives us a 1, 5, 7, 9 quad in this box. Now we can take 5, 7 out of there, but we still have the quad, which means these cells have to be 3, 6, and 8. Now that one can't be 8, that one can't be 3. Actually, that one is a 6 because there's a 3 looking at it. That one's a 3, and that one is an 8. So these are fixed at this point. That being a 6 means this is a 5 or a 7. So these digits are given by this hidden quad. I actually quite like that. Now we've locked 7 into those, so we know that can't be a 7 either. There is... Three must go in this column, and it can't go there, there, or there. So we put a 3 in there, which puts a 3 in there. This becomes 5, 7, or 9. Six can't go there or there, so we put 6 into one of those two. This 3 is looking over, making that a 6, that a 3, that a 6. Is that all the 3s? That's all the 3s. How am I doing for 6s? 6s are in those two. Yep, so the 6s lining up in those spots. So we know this is 7, 8, or 9. We know this is 1, 7, or 9. Might be this row now. So I need 1, 5, and 9. This can't be 5. So that gives, I'm going to clean this up first. This can't be 1. I think that's everything. But this has given us a 1, 9 pair in column 7. So this becomes a 6. This becomes a 9. This takes 9 out of all 3 of those. And now 9 is pinched into those two cells, which means I can take 9 out of those. This becomes an 8. This becomes a 7. This becomes a 7. There is no 7 here. So we've now got, and here is a deduction that had actually been called out to me as one that was particularly liked. This is a 5, 9 on the diagonal, so we know they are different. So these cannot be the same digit. So one must be 9, one must be 5, which means that cell can neither be a 5 or a 9. That must be a 7, making that a 5, that a 1, that a 9. We've got to put 6 in there, an 8 in there. That 5 is looking back at the diagonal, making that 9 and 5. We can now resolve all of this. And from this point on, the puzzle collapses fairly quickly, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are 5, 8, and 9. That can't be 5 or 8, so that's 9. That's a 5, 8 pair. That's the 8. That's the 5. This is 7 and 9, which is not currently resolved. Or if it is, I'm not seeing it. This is 1 and 5. That is resolved. 1, 5. I can take 7 out of there. I can take 9 out of there, and that becomes a 1, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 7 and 8, which means that can't be 6. So that's the 6. That's the 1. That 1 makes that a 7. That a 1. That a 7. This needs to be 7 and 8, and I just put a 7 next to it. Whoa, what did I do there? That's a 7. Oh, that 7 is now looking up at that 8, which is making that a 7. The digit missing from there is 9, which makes that an 8, which makes that a 9, which makes that an 8. The digit missing from this box is a 1. That's a 9. That's a 7. The digit missing from there is 5, and the final digit I put into the box is a 9. And that completes the puzzle. As I said, after that initial break-in, there are many paths through this puzzle. So you could find the deductions in different ways. But I believe the key deductions of needing to narrow this down to force the 2 into here, and then finding this triple, finding the quad up here, finding the 6 pair down here. All of these can be done in a different order, restricting these 2 cells, so the 5 and the 4. All of these dots that are put in here are required to be solved. This one I think is done near the end, but all of these are used, but the order that you use them in can change once the break-in is complete, and that will change the order in which you discover the stuff in the grid. Anyway, that is my puzzle go. I do like it. I think it's not a bad puzzle, and I hope that you enjoy it. If you've got any feedback about my puzzles, please feel to drop me a comment. I also put into the comments of my video how you can email me or reach me on the Cracking the Cryptic Discord server. Thank you very much for watching, and once again, as people have told me I should say, please feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you very much.